Now that the Florida State Seminoles have caught up to the Gators and the Canes on the recruiting trail, will they pass them?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is going to be about the recruiting rise of Florida State, some key commitment dates coming up, including an offensive tackle that's very important, a new potential offer to a player from overseas, and just the overall great opportunity that Florida State has to finally not just catch the Gators and Canes on the recruiting trail, but to surpass them. How did they get there? What is next? And what is the finality of doing so? So let's get started. Overall, this is a very important week. It's the end of the recruiting boom. This Saturday will be the end for most part. There's a few kids committing here and there around the country. Friday and Saturday is a big day. Florida State in particular has 3 off the top of my head that are scheduled. There could be more on Saturday to make their commitment dates. Whether they end up with Florida State, we will see, but I will go over some of that in here in a second. But first off, this just shows you the randomness of recruiting, and it's one of the reasons that I follow it so closely. There's nothing like recruiting because you never know when an offer is going to go out. You don't know where it's going to go, and even if it's going to be within the United States of America. To that point, Coach Norvell, per Noles 24/7, has reached out to a young man. They've had him on their board for a while, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this. He's from Sweden, Gustav Henriks Ross. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I highly doubt that I am, but he's a defensive end, 6'4", 240. Among the reported offers for what they are worth, Georgia, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Boise State. If Georgia offers a defensive front 7 player, I'm interested. Even if it was an offer at a certain point, I think they're pretty much full at defensive line now. I still like it. He's 6'4", 235, 240, somewhere in that range. If he's truly 6'4", and that's the key, I need to see the actual measurements myself. I trust nothing. But if he's a 6'4", 240 guy that can move, because Kirby is insanely particular about size with his front 7 guys, in particular D-line, that's something you can work with. Florida State is absolutely in the market for a pass rusher in this class. They don't have that guy that stand up on the edge, downhill pass rusher. They need at least one, and they really need 2. They don't have one yet. Maybe this is one of the cures. And before anybody asks, no, I haven't seen any film. I don't know much about the kid. I'm going to research a little more of that over the next few days, but he does not, to my knowledge, have an official offer from the Noles yet. But Norvell said he was going to evaluate it with the young man after he talks to his staff. Like, they're going to meet about whether to offer the kid. This is interesting because, like, not only is it a player that I don't know much about, if anything really, except for his offers, he's not even from America. If that's not unusual, well, he wouldn't be recruiting, I guess, because that's just the nature of it. Like, Florida State's D-line haul primarily comes from Georgia, Florida. That's just kind of the norm. This year they get one kid from California. That happens once in a while. But I don't think even Bowden signed anybody from Sweden. So we'll see where that goes. And I thought that was pretty interesting. As of Tuesday, Florida State has 22 commitments. They have the number 11 class per 24/7 Sports. I think that's a pretty fair assessment. It's a pretty balanced class. I just want to kind of hit on a couple of things here, and then we'll get into the commitment dates. You've got your quarterback, you got your running back, you got 5 different guys that could play receiver. It's a good start. Like, the skill talent on offense, they needed a good influx of speed. Like, Florida State's got a ton of speed in this class. All those things have been conquered already. So they're ahead of schedule there. Offensive line has a few guys. They're still waiting on Wilson Zierer. I'll get to him in a minute. In my opinion, he's the most important guy left on the board. Again, I'll talk about him momentarily, but they're at least heading in the right direction. For the record, I have been told Ionata can play offensive tackle. Now, I didn't get this from Florida State, but somebody that knows what he's doing, that's an offensive line trainer, buddy of mine said that kid can play tackle. If you've got one there and you get Zierer, this would be 2 years in a row. You got multiple guys that can play offensive tackle that have high ceiling. Like Florida State just hasn't had that in a long time. I want to wait for the Zierer decision to have the following conversation on this show, but I'm going to do a rundown of Florida State O-line recruiting, specifically tackle, compared to other major programs over the last 7-8 years, just to show you how far behind they were. To quickly pull out of it is not feasible. You need 3 years conservatively of elite offensive tackle recruiting to get where you need to go because it takes so long to develop linemen. It's the slowest spot. But it's the process they're in, and they're ahead of the curve right now. They got a couple good ones last year. They got Lucas Simmons on campus. This could be a 2-tackle class. We'll see again if Wilson Zierer ends up in the class or not. But the last I heard on him, and he does not, I repeat, he does not have a commitment date public yet. The young man from Raven Gap High School up in the edge of the mountains of Georgia. It's a boarding school. They got a bunch of elite players. He's 6'5", 285. His brother played at Auburn, knows Gus because of that. I'm sure they know Herb and all that too. But here's the more important part. He took a visit to Auburn. He took a visit to Georgia. He took a visit to Alabama. He took a visit to Florida State. There are people picking Florida State. So 2 things. Number one, not only do you have a very good chance to get an offensive tackle that's highly coveted, you're trending for a kid that his brother played in the SEC, and I've had a face-to-face conversation with him. He told me, hey, I'm an Auburn fan. My brother went here. I followed Auburn for like 6-7 years. I forget what the number was. His brother's quite a bit older. That would be quite a coup. Florida State does not come from behind on offensive linemen very, very often. It's amazing what happens when you get people on campus that are motivated to recruit for you. The last staff just had too much dead weight as recruiting goes, and I don't know what the real deal is. I mean, every now and then they get a really good player, but they just couldn't get over the hump. And now, to be honest with you, I kind of expect Florida State to sign 3-4 man classes every year that are pretty good. They've just put in the effort, all the official visits, etc. Now, they've missed on a bunch, but they haven't been able to show they're putting guys in the NFL. I'm not shocked. But the effort they put forth on O-line recruiting this year is a bazillion times better than what I've seen in the last several years. I mean, it's not even in the same stratosphere. That's just reality because too many guys wanted the low-hanging fruit, the guy that's already at least somewhat developed. Let's just get a guy out of the portal. Not a good idea. So I'm glad Florida State has learned its lesson. Norvell has revamped the staff, and they've revamped how they go about recruiting. That's how you win football games. When we come back, I'll give out some of the dates, some of my thoughts on what's next with recruiting, and why I think they actually have a chance to pass both Miami and Florida in recruiting. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head over to the ball game with some friends and family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes all of it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying tickets. For me, with Gametime, it's the convenience. You can look at ticket prices. You can get an idea of what the price is, top of the stadium, lower, right in front of the person singing, anything like that. And if you're at a baseball game, whether it's a play, whatever, you can look at your seat view, as mentioned a moment ago, right there from your phone. You can see how far you are to the stage, to the pitcher's mound, to center court on a basketball court, anything else you can possibly imagine. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. And when you're done, if you haven't checked out the Portal Podcast, that's my other pod, make sure you check it out as well. All the latest recruiting news, got NIL stuff going on like crazy. There's a bunch of stuff going on. I'm going to touch on it just a little bit here on Locked On Seminoles at the end. But that's about to go boom on August 1st. There's going to be some kids not very happy when their deals don't clear, and they're going to be back on the market. Florida State could be the beneficiary there as well. But that podcast is all about recruiting Florida State and across the board. I actually just put one up about BYU, how they've changed everything with their NIL. And I'm doing team podcasts every day discussing their futures and what's going on with the recruitment. So check out the Portal Podcast. As for Florida State, passing the Gators and passing the Canes, let's be honest, that's what most Florida State fans want to discuss in the offseason. Where are we with our rivals? That's fair. Right now, if you would have said, Brian, in mid-June to early July, would Florida State catch up with those two in recruiting? I said no. I said they'll be close, but they'll be behind. They're right there with them, and it just depends on your perspective which one of the three has the best class. It's very, very close between all three, the Gators, Canes, and Noles. Simple as that. But the point is, Florida State has done that off a 2-win season. That is incredible. I started to look at the numbers today, and I was pretty impressed with it. So without further ado, how can they get ahead now? They have the 11th class, have 22 players committed. How could they get ahead? Well, here's part of it. According to Noles 24/7 and some of my own intel as well, Florida State, depends on your perspective on who's going where, but I'm just going to give the dates. July 12th, which is this upcoming Saturday that I know of, there's 3 that are listed with 24/7. And these, for the record, these kids change their announcement times a lot. With that being stated, we've got Rodney Colton Jr., a kid that I thought was going to go to Florida State for the longest time, but it's just taken forever to kind of finalize it. I haven't heard much the last few days. Ole Miss has made a run at him. He's still got Colorado on the list. Never count out Dion for a recruit. And then, of course, the Noles. He's a kid out of Noonan, Georgia, just south of Atlanta. Really like his film. Kid that can run. It would be good to get a third linebacker in this class. Florida State needs to get back to the point where they got some balance. They got 2 linebackers that are good, but they need to add the depth. Like Florida State linebacker recruiting, much like O-line, hasn't been to the level it needs. If they miss on Colton, and again, I really don't know where he's going, they got to find somebody else that's not only a fill-in, they got to get another dude. They need a thumper to go along with the other 2 they have. They've got to restock and get to the point. It doesn't have to be 1995 Florida State, but they've got to get better. If their objective is to compete for the ACC title and then go to the playoff and actually do something, this is where the rubber meets the road. They're to that pretty good point, but again, the goal is to get ahead of the Canes, to get ahead of the Gators. If you do those 2 things, you're also getting yourself in college football playoff contention. Let's just be honest. The 2 go hand in hand. Now, this is a kid I haven't talked about a ton. I've seen him once. Contrell Webb out of Collins Hill, another Atlanta area school, defensive end, pure pass rusher. He could play that stand-up end spot that Florida State needs. He's another kid July 12th is supposed to announce. I'm not sure where he's going. I haven't heard a lot here lately, but his other finalists are Purdue and Indiana. If that is correct, and it's Purdue and Indiana, and Florida State loses, that is not a good sign. You cannot lose to those schools for a kid from the greater Atlanta metropolitan area. Yeah, I know Florida State didn't go to the playoff. Indiana did. I get it. I went to Indiana. Like, that's not a football school. It is a basketball school. First 5 spots on that campus are basketball, 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 basketball. Can't lose kids to Indiana in football recruiting. You just can't. At least not for a kid from Georgia. I'm curious on that one. If Florida State really went after him, and I'll look into that as well, that's a kid they should be able to get. This defense is perfect for Webb. He's shot out of a cannon. He's a little bit undersized. He's listed at 6'3". I don't think he's 6'3". He's probably 6'1.5", 6'2". But he's just got a natural edge to him. He finds a way. Like, he's just slithery. He gets underneath the hands of bigger offensive tackles. He's annoying. He's that guy. Now, does that mean that he's a finished product? No. He's still a kid and needs to add weight and all that. Probably a redshirt year, then he can play. But that's okay. Bowden did the same thing. He took a bazillion 3-star kids just like that. They were a little bit undersized and they ended up being good. Renard Wilson was almost identical to him coming out of high school. He ended up being the 14th pick in the NFL draft by the Cincinnati Bengals. If you develop these kids, especially if you've got a scheme that fits their talent, Florida State fits him very well, this would be a great pickup. We also have another one that's pretty important, but I don't think it's going to go FSU's way. I think he should play offensive tackle, but the kid wants to play tight end. Hezzy Kent out of Brunswick, Georgia. I think he's going to be a Gator. I think Florida has led for a long time from what I've heard, but Florida State did get him on campus. And at one point, Miami thought they had a shot. I have not heard anything about Miami lately. We'll see. He wants to play tight end. He's like 280. He's been up to 300 before. I think it's inevitable. He's going to put his hand in the dirt and stay there. Florida State needs a tight end as well. If he doesn't lose the weight, ends up at O-line, you're fine. If you get a big blocking tight end, that's not a bad thing either. We'll see how that goes. We also have Deron Parks, July 26th. This kid I'm very high on, higher than most. And apparently Ohio State agrees with me because the last I heard is Ohio State wants to take him. Auburn was the leader at one point. I've heard varying reports there. But right now I'm here at Ohio State. Florida State would like to get him, but I don't think they're on the inside on this one. I think they're going to come in second or third. But he's a 340-pound offensive lineman from Cardinal Mooney in Sarasota. We'll see if Florida State makes another run after he makes his decision or if they can somehow change his mind. But it's kind of hard during a dead period. He can't visit. And until we get, I don't know if it's August or September, but it's going to be a while before kids can be on campus again. So we'll see what happens with Parks. Now, when I come back, I'm going to talk about 5 guys that I think have a chance to come in and make an impact out of this group and why they can help Florida State get over the top and, again, be ahead of the Gators and Canes. Those guys that I just mentioned, if they get 2 or 3 of them, they would be ahead of both, in my opinion. Any of those guys, especially if Wilson Zierer drops for Florida State too, and it's very possible he could. But the other guys that I'm going to talk about here in a second, these are the players that are going to be the central part of your class in more ways than one. That is next here on Locked on Seminoles. Florida State's recruiting class is pretty darn balanced. It's nice to finally say that. Since I've covered Florida State, recruiting just hasn't been prioritized enough, but now it is, and it shows. It's just not that hard to recruit to Florida State. If you put in the effort, the circumference within a 500-mile radius of Tallahassee, you do whatever you want. That is as good as it gets. Heck, 300-mile radius. You can get just about anything you need. You don't even have to get to South Florida. That's just a bonus. Florida State can win just within a 300-mile radius and be a top 10 team. And they're finding a few guys here and there around the country to add on top, the cherry, if you will, on top of the banana split. So these are just my 5, and I'm going to talk about them, why this can be the class that turns the tide for Florida State, and you can start beating Florida, start beating Miami, start beating Clemson, etc., with some regularity. Jaden O'Neal. After meeting him, the personality is very important, and I'm going to have him on the show later this week, barring something unforeseen. Great kid, has the size. He's a patient guy. He's very mature for his age. You got to have guys like that on your roster in general. I don't discount that, but it's really important at quarterback. If you don't, look, I don't care how talented they are. There's probably going to be cracks in the foundation, meaning the locker room, practice field, guys not trusting in each other, etc. Getting quarterbacks like Jaden O'Neal talent-wise is one part, but the other has to come as well, and it may be more important in some ways. Getting mature people that know how to be on camera, that know how to speak to other people, very important. Florida State got a good kid right there, and it got a winner. Amari Thomas. Look, I hate it when Florida State allows local area talent to walk. Like they don't put in the effort. They kind of half recruit them. Every program's done it at some point. Miami's done that with some kids in the public league down there over the years. Then the kids go off to Pittsburgh or the MAC or whatever, and then they get mad that they let them go. Florida State's done that sometimes in the Panhandle. Even Bowden missed on some. Mark Thomas is right down the road, though. Like he's from less than an hour away. They jumped on it early. and they got him. That was one of the better moves that I've seen. That kid is going to fight for your program. It is going to mean something to him when they play Miami, when they play the Gators. He's a panhandle kid. He grew up with it. It's one thing to have a recruiting ranking. It's another thing to have a kid that wants to represent the Spear. You can't really put a numerical value on that. I'm glad Florida State's recruiting locally. They're not having as much success as I would like, but at least they're putting in the effort. And Amari was a Noles fan. They wrapped him up pretty quick. Ephraim White, this is one that I didn't think they were going to keep. But the longer that this goes on, the better I feel about where Florida State's at. Two things. He visited NC State and Notre Dame. Notre Dame's filled up at receiver. They're done. So that's not an option. I'm just going to say it. I'm not trying to be mean, but I highly doubt NC State is flipping Florida State's wide receivers. Quick. How excited would you be right now if you were a teenager and you were a wide receiver recruit? Let's go Wolfpack. They're not any good on offense. They stink. If you think Florida State was bad, at least they revamped their offense and brought in new coaches and stuff. Like NC State, their head coach is just too defensive minded. I don't think they're going to sell many guys. They just lost their best receiver to Texas A&M too. I don't think they're going to lose him, and that kid can fly. He's going to need some weight, but Ephraim White's the kind of kid that Bobby Bowden would have circled on his board right from the get-go when they started looking at juniors. I guarantee it. That kind of kid from Florida, and for the record, he's at Vero Beach. It's a very good program or on the west coast of Florida, or on the east coast, excuse me. He has the ability to play early, especially as like a return man. Absolutely. Freshman or sophomore year, we're going to see him do something with the football on a play that was jaw-dropping. He's that kind of athlete. I don't know where he's going to play. He could still play defense. It would not shock me, but that's the kind of guy Bowden likes. Therefore, I'm going to defer to the Hall of Fame coach. Devin Carter, this one's pretty simple. The film told me all I needed to know, especially considering his dad is Dexter Carter, the famous Florida State player from 86 to 90, but I got to see him live at Rivals 5-star. There was a play where the defense did their job. They were in zone. Devin was the check. Throw it down to him. DB's right there. DB not only didn't make the play, and in 7-on-7, he just got to touch the guy. He didn't come close, and this was a top 100 kind of player. That kid can run. I said it earlier in the pod. I'm going to say it again. They got a lot of speed in this class. Devin has juice. That kid is shot out of a cannon, and most importantly, this is very, very important. He understands angles, when to juke, when to just to hit the jets. He's got natural feel for the game. I will be shocked if Jaden O'Neal isn't going to have a lot of fun with Ephraim White. I mean, they got 5 receivers, but like just Ephraim White and Devin Carter, like, look, it's not that hard. If you want to play man defense against that, go right ahead. Good luck. That is not going to be easy. Florida State's getting the twitchy kids, the quick strike guys, kind of the Snoop Menace types of guys that they didn't normally get. Still got to develop them. They've got to add weight and all that stuff, but they're getting the athletes they need to be very competitive again. That will be fun. I'm curious to see if Florida State employs more 4 and 5 wide, not this season, but starting in 26 and on, because they're going to have enough depth at wide receiver again to have a normal wide receiver depth chart. What a concept. Speed at receiver at Florida State. That should be the norm. It's going to be starting next year. Finally, not that this one's going to surprise anybody, Chauncey Kennan. We have talked about him a million times on this show. And if you go to War Chant, if you go to Noles 24/7, if you go to any Florida State site, if you go watch one of Wilfong's whip-arounds, I guarantee you Chauncey Kennan is somebody you're going to see in some capacity on one of these platforms because he was recruited by everybody. The big 3 in Florida, Georgia, LSU. I really don't have to go any further. 6'1.5", 6'2" corners do not grow on trees, especially when they have some physicality to them. He's got suddenness that you need to play the position, and he could potentially be a guy that if you wanted, maybe he plays nickel, maybe he plays free safety. He has some versatility. He could probably play on the offensive side of the ball and put him at running back or receiver. He's just a very good athlete. Again, He fits the mold of the kind of guy that Bowden would have recruited. Check, please. I'm good with that. They just got to get him in and coach him up now. The biggest part with that, and this is just personal and it's kind of political with recruiting, Chauncey Cannon grew up an FSU fan, for those who don't know. Losing those kids has been the norm, not just for FSU, but for Florida and Miami. Like, a lot of those kids are leaving the state right now. Bama and Georgia in particular have murdered this state in recruiting for a decade. But if you really want to get back to the point where you can be a dominant program again, there's no shortcut. Not only you got to beat the Canes and the Gators, you got to beat the Tide and the Bulldogs, among others. You got to beat the Irish, the Longhorns. It's a little more broad now, but they're starting to get some of those kids. It needs to go to another level, and that'll probably be tomorrow's show. We're going to talk about recruiting in 27, talk about how they build the roster, how they build off this season, because they're going to have a pretty good roster in 26. It's going to be better than what most people think. I consider myself an expert on FSU's roster. I just need to see how they employ everything to feel fully comfortable. But that defense, I'm really interested how they utilize the three safeties. So the Alabama game I need to see before I talk much about the D. But on offense, I know Gus's offense pretty well. I'm just curious if he uses a little more four wide receiver. I know he loves Pittman. He's a really good player. But I think they're going to be able to spread them out and just really pick people apart because they're going to have more speed. Nothing wrong with that. You don't have to make it complex. They got the running backs. They're finally getting the offensive linemen. It's kind of fun. So if Florida State can hit on a few of these, Zierer, very, very important. Again, top of the board to me, regardless of position, who's left. If I could only take one guy, it would be Wilson Zierer. He's an offensive tackle. Everybody needs offensive tackles. Secondarily, if they could get somebody else pass rusher, I'll take Webb, but that's just being picky. We'll see how many other guys are added. One more note here. We're just in early to mid-July here. At some point, there's going to be a couple other kids, kind of like the Swede that I mentioned at the outset of the show. They're going to try to flip somebody. There's going to be a junior college kid, or there's going to be somebody else they see this fall that's been on their radar that was more B-list, and they think he's taking a step up. Whatever it is, one of the keys for me evaluating a program and how well they're doing, back office staff, assistant coaches, etc., do you have the guts to go out on your own and offer a kid that maybe nobody else in your league did or in your state, whatever, and do that with confidence? That's one thing I've liked about Norvell historically. He offers the kids that he wants. There have been some guys that have played quite a bit that other teams didn't want that he liked. They've come in and done things. So some of them went to the NFL. So I'm curious, does that continue? The staff changed quite a bit, but can they find one more diamond in the rough sometime during this season? My guess is they will, but we'll see. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Please subscribe to this podcast and share it and comment down below. We will see you again soon on Locked On Seminoles.